Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer because today we are tackling a massive paradigm shift in real estate acquisitions. Look, if you've ever spent hours analyzing a property, staring at complex spreadsheets, just trying to pull together a defendable offer, you know that the traditional, highly manual process of real estate underwriting is grueling. It's the kind of old-school grind that eats up entire weekends. It leads to missed opportunities when you simply can't crunch the numbers fast enough, and honestly, it creates this intense mental fatigue when a deal ultimately falls through after days of exhausting due diligence. So today, we're going to look at how modern technology is completely disrupting that slow, error-prone workflow, acting as a fascinating case study in how PropTech is totally changing the game for investors.
Right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself a very serious question. How fast can you accurately underwrite a real estate deal? Imagine this highly stressful but super common scenario. A highly motivated seller is on the phone with you right now, but they're also fielding calls from 3 other competing investors. You are literally racing against the clock. Can you verify local property taxes, cross-reference recent neighborhood sales, and factor in estimated rehab costs, all while trying to keep that seller on the line? Can you actually get a defendable, mathematically sound offer calculated before they lose patience and just hang up? For most acquisitions teams, that anxiety is all too real. The tension is palpable because, historically, achieving that kind of speed usually meant drastically sacrificing accuracy.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll cover 1. The art of the comp. 2. The old-school labyrinth. 3. Hidden dangers and blind spots. 4. The need for speed. And finally, 5. The Compr Revolution. Okay, let's dive into this.
Section 1. The art of the compact foundation of valuation. So every single home valuation method fundamentally relies on comps. Whether it's a comparative market analysis from a local agent, a highly regulated bank appraisal, or a modern iBuyer generating a cash offer, it all starts right here. And the basic logic is incredibly straightforward, right? Buyers in the open market will pay roughly what others have recently paid for similar, nearby properties. You're looking for alignment in location, total square footage, the specific number of beds and baths, and the overall property condition. But here's the catch. While the concept itself is simple, the manual execution is an absolute nightmare. Think about it. What happens if a nearby house sold for 50 grand more, but it happened to have a fully renovated kitchen and a freshly added second bathroom? The complex math required to manually adjust for those specific structural differences is exactly where the underwriting trouble really begins. Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The old-school labyrinth Fannie Mae guidelines. To truly grasp the traditional underwriting burden, you just have to look at the Fannie Mae Selling Guide. The source documentation for this standard is absolutely staggering. It is a massive, multi-layered labyrinth of strict bureaucratic rules, covering everything from detailed uniform appraisal datasets to incredibly specific adjustment guidelines for comparable sales. Just consider what it means to manually execute a neighborhood section analysis. An underwriter has to physically draw boundary lines on a map, assess specific zoning changes, track microeconomic trends in that exact neighborhood, and document every single bit of it flawlessly. Human underwriters are navigating this immense complexity every single day. And as the source material points out, when you manage this manually, Murphy's Law absolutely applies. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Cutting corners to save time on these dense requirements almost always comes back to financially haunt your investment.
The manual checklist required to do this properly is just punishing. You pull home purchase data, meticulously verify square footage, evaluate neighborhood trends by hand, and cross-check info across multiple, completely disconnected platforms. A prime example of this nightmare is adjusting for distressed sale ratios. If a neighborhood has a high percentage of foreclosures, an appraiser is legally required to include them, which artificially lowers valuations. To do this manually, an underwriter literally has to sit there with a calculator, jumping back and forth between county tax records and the MLS, trying to figure out the exact mathematical ratio of distressed versus non-distressed properties. It eats up hours of precious time, leaves massive room for human error, and quite frankly, brings the entire acquisitions process to a grinding halt.
Let's slow things down just a bit for Section 3, Hidden Dangers and Blind Spots, Free Tool Blind Spots, because the friction here is huge.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing exactly what happens when investors try to piece together these complex valuations using free, publicly available tools. They inevitably run into the famous 12 open tabs problem. Relying on this fragmented approach means you are essentially flying blind. If you use Zillow, sure, you get basic sold prices, but its algorithmic Zestimate notoriously misses interior property condition and recent structural renovations, carrying a massive 7.49% error rate on off-market deals.
Switch over to Redfin, and you're relying heavily on the MLS, meaning you completely miss off-market and for sale by owner transactions. Go straight to the county assessor for tax data, you get 0 photos and 0 condition grading. Missing just one crucial piece of data, like a foundation issue that wasn't on the tax record, or an off-market comp right next door, can completely kill your profit margins and financially ruin a deal.
And man, let's not forget the absolute headache of operating in non-disclosure states. In major real estate markets across states like Texas, Utah, Idaho, and Alaska, transaction details are intentionally kept confidential to protect buyer privacy and stabilize property tax assessments. The actual public sales data is essentially hidden behind a curtain. This system intentionally keeps licensed real estate agents and professional appraisers central to the market, while simultaneously creating a massive, blinding roadblock for independent investors. Trying to find accurate, defendable numbers in these specific markets using traditional manual methods is an incredibly frustrating, severely fragmented experience that puts investors at a huge disadvantage.
Section 4. The need for speed, losing deals to speed. Because the old way doesn't just give you a headache, it actively hurts your wallet. So the crucial point is, slow math inevitably means losing lucrative deals to much faster buyers. Think back to that multi-hour, 12-tab Fannie Mae compliant headache we just walked through. What if a centralized engine could do all of that simultaneously? The massive breakthrough here is reducing all of that friction down to exactly 60 seconds. Imagine taking the exhaustive cross-checking, the blind spot navigation, the distressed property ratio calculations, and condensing it entirely into a single minute of processing time. Which brings us to Section 5, the Compr Revolution. Prop tech built by investors for investors.
Generating a defendable offer with modern prop tech starts with one ridiculously simple, streamlined action. Instead of the chaotic, manual data entry grids and massive spreadsheets of the past, the system relies on extreme minimalism. It simply requires typing in a single property address. That's it. There are no overwhelming dashboards to decode, no need to maintain a dozen open browser tabs, and no manual mathematical calculations required to even begin. An investor just enters the target property, initiates the search, and lets the automated engine do the heavy lifting that used to take an entire acquisitions team several hours to complete. And this brilliantly illustrates the workflow under the hood. The system operates on a precise 4-move engine. First, the target address comes in, either entered manually or piped directly from an investor's CRM via something like Zapier. Second, it instantly pulls comparable sales and condition data from both public records and licensed MLS partners. To find the absolute best matches, the system expands the search radius and property similarities in calculated phases, known as tiers A through E, automatically dropping statistical outliers and distressed anomalies without a human ever having to intervene. Third, it calculates the complex offer math based on those highly refined comps. And finally, it pushes the maximum allowable offer, complete with a full audit trail and a targeted seller pitch script right back into the investor's CRM.
The most significant bypass of the old-school grind, though, is the automated condition grading. Modern tools like Compr Revolution actually evaluate the property's condition straight from the available photos. It completely removes the human guesswork of an underwriter squinting at blurry images or trying to assess rehab levels from a plain text county assessor file. For example, if a home is categorized as Q3 quality, meaning it's been recently updated or fully renovated, the AI recognizes those interior upgrades directly from the images. It then calculates and drops a fully vetted maximum allowable offer, or MAO, directly onto the screen, adjusting for those medium to heavy rehab variables instantly.
Furthermore, modern underwriting doesn't just output a single generic number anymore. The system instantly calculates the exact math across all 6 major real estate exit strategies: wholesale, novation, traditional listing, rehab, rental, and the BRRRR method. And for those focused on distinct strategies, remember a novation acts as a structured partnership with the seller to flip the property, while BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. The engine runs the complex financial models for all of these simultaneously and clearly leads with the absolute strongest exit strategy for that specific property. For an acquisitions team, knowing instantly whether a property is better suited for a quick wholesale flip or a structured novation gives you a massive, undeniable competitive advantage before the seller even has a chance to clear their throat. So, we've seen the stark contrast here between the traditional, grueling methodology and the modern approach. On one hand, you have a human underwriter juggling 12 open browser tabs, manually cross-referencing tax data, and struggling to comply with complex guidelines.
On the other, you have a streamlined, 60-second AI-driven engine that automatically grades property condition and writes highly accurate offers directly to a CRM. So, in an era where complex, deeply accurate underwriting takes just one single minute, what exactly is the future of human underwriters in real estate acquisitions? Are they going to become entirely obsolete, or will their daily roles evolve into something focused way more on high-level strategy and seller psychology rather than just doing manual math? It is a fascinating paradigm shift, and one that every focused learner in real estate needs to be paying very close attention to. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the way things have always been done. Catch you next time.